This
Please.
call is now being recorded.
Okay, please start. Please
Can you
start.
hear? Able to hear, ma'am?
No, 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 no.
Hello.
Yes, please start.
A 40-year-old male,
Yes.
patient name Mr. Sekhar, came from Annanagar, occupation as a taxi driver, came with chief complaints of breathlessness since 3 years, palpitation for 6 months, cough since 1 month, history of presenting illness. The patient was apparently normal 3 years back when he started developing breathlessness on climbing 3 flights of stairs, grade 2 NOAHA. It was exceptional, insidious in onset, and has gradually progressed to breathlessness at rest since past 1 week. It's grade 4 NIHA. He was associated with nighttime awakenings, paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, which is episodic, no associated wheezing present. Breathlessness increased on lying down since past 10 days, which was relieved on upright position. He also experienced intermittent palpitation since 6 months, which was insidious in onset, progressive, irregular in rhythm, and occurred on exertion and relieved on taking rest. It is associated with sweating, no during period for blood thin and increased urine. His well one
Audio is not clear. Audio is not clear, doctor.
Ma'am, can you able to hear me, ma'am?
Yeah, now I think on and off your audio is going. Hello?
Hello, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Yeah, continue.
Can you- Hello?
Hello?
Vasu, there is a break in between.
Yes. I think your net is not clear thing, I think.
Ma'am, can you able to hear me now?
Yeah, we'll see. You start.
Okay, ma'am. Uh, bilateral swelling of the ankle.
Dr. Vasudevan, audio is not clear.
Can you try some place, Vasu?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. 1 minute, ma'am.
Yeah, no issues.
Hello, ma'am. Can you able to hear me now?
Yes, yes. Can you, from previous slide, please?
Yes, ma'am. From his
Yeah.
now, can you able to hear me clear, ma'am?
Yes, yes, yes. I think for everybody it should be clear. Previous slide.
Yes, ma'am. History of presenting illness.
Yeah.
The patient was apparently normal 3 years back when he started developing breathlessness on climbing of 3 flights of stairs, grade 2 NIHA. It was exertional, insidious in onset, and has gradually progressed to breathlessness at rest since past 1 week, grade 4 NIHA. He was associated with nighttime awakening, paroxysmal paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, which is episodic, no associated wheezing present. Breathlessness increased on lying down since past 10 days, which was relieved on upright position. He also experienced intermittent palpitation since 6 months, which was insidious in onset, progressive, irregular in rhythm, and occurred on exertion and relieved on taking rest. It is associated with sweating not felt during sleep. He also had repeated attacks of cough over the past 1 month. Cough was associated with expectoration, which was non-foul, pink, frothy, blood tinged, and about 5 to 10 ml in quantity, increased on lying down position, no diurnal variation.
Okay, next.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. History of bilateral swelling of ankles for the past 1 month, gradual in onset, progressive in nature, not associated with facial swelling, no diurnal variation. History of easy fatigability for the past 1 month.
Okay. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
wait.
No history. Yes, ma'am.
Wait. So these are all the positive histories you have so far given.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Come to the chief complaints. Okay, so here it's a case where breathlessness is for past 3 years, palpitation 6 months, and cough for 1 month duration.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, age of this patient?
40-year-old.
40-year-old. So very
Yes,
good.
ma'am.
So when you're describing, okay, yeah. When you're coming to the presenting illness.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so breathlessness. He was apparently normal and started developing breathlessness. How do you classify NIHA grading? Tell me the NIHA grading.
It has four class, ma'am. First one is
Okay.
no limitation on doing any normal work. Second is a slight limitation with having having dyspnea doing work, ma'am. The grade 3 is marked limitation, which is when doing less than normal work.
Very good.
The grade 4 is even dyspnea even at rest.
Excellent. So this is a NIHA classification. And 1 minute, I'm getting a call. 1 minute.
Yes.
Yeah, Vasudevan, please.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Yes,
Sorry.
ma'am.
Okay. Now, so this breathlessness, it was an exertional breathlessness, insidious and gradually progressive, and breathlessness is up to rest for past 1 week.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
what you're trying to give. Progressively increasing breathlessness from grade, it has now become grade 4 past 1 week. And it is associated with
Yes, ma'am.
paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, episodic. How many episodes
Yes, ma'am.
usually they give some numbers? Was it mentioned? Tell me.
No, no, ma'am. Whenever
Okay.
during sleep he is having paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. After he wakes up and
Okay.
gets breathing, he
Okay.
is not.
So what is paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea? Can you tell me?
During sleep, it occur after 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours. This is due to increase. Uh,
What? What is the pathophysiology?
yes, ma'am. Increased sympathetic outflow during REM sleep, ma'am. So it
Increased. Okay.
in failing heart, when there is increased sympathetic outflow, it will increase the failure, ma'am. So it is like doing exercise in sleeping. It
Tachycardia. That
aggravate
is
the.
one thing, the
Yes, ma'am.
REM sleep. Okay. Then
Yes. Then
otherwise
during
the
sleeping, there will
yeah.
be redistribution of blood volume in the. So there will be more. It will cause more pressure in pulmonary. So there will be
So
cooling of blood
interstitial
in
pooling of blood in the lungs, and
blood
that's why sudden
lungs.
onset of breathlessness. Okay.
Yes.
So that is presence of PND indicates what?
Left heart failure.
Excellent. So presence of PND indicates left heart failure. Then usually how the progress is grade 4 to grade 1 to grade 4, and usually which will come earlier? Is it PND or is it orthopnea?
PND comes earlier.
Excellent. So earlier in the phase of the disease process, it starts with the pre-PND, which will be episodic, like most probably 3 or 4 episodes. That's the maximum they are going to tell. Then for past 1 month, you have given the history that it has become, there is also even on lying down, that is patient is having orthopnea. Now the pathophysiology behind orthopnea is very simple. That is on lying down, redistribution of fluids comes to the lungs and patient. That is why patient will, if you see the patient in the ward who is in this orthopnea, patient will not be lying down at all. Either they'll be in a proper position or they'll be comfortable only when you give a backrest, or they'll have 2 to 3 pillows behind. Even in the midnight, you go in the rounds and you will see in the ward, they'll always be sitting. They'll not be able to lie down because of this orthopnea. Okay, and what is which was relieved on upright position. Okay, can you tell me what is prepopnea?
Ma'am?
Prepopnea.
Prepopnea is when dyspnea when patient lies in the lateral position.
Lateral position. What is platypnea?
Platypnea when dyspnea occurs when the patient in the upright position, sitting position.
What conditions will call platypnea?
Don't know.
No idea. Okay. Have you heard of platypnea orthodeoxia syndrome, POS?
No, ma'am.
No. Usually, nowadays in this latest pandemic, even in COVID, we are seeing that the patient will be lying down comfortably. But when you make the patient sit up, patient becomes dyspneic and tachypneic. Okay. That is
Okay.
one platypnea. And there is AV shunts in what condition you can get. Hepatopulmonary syndrome. Have you heard of this terminology? Hepatopulmonary syndrome. It is a complication of total hypertension. Okay. There will be opening up of AV shunts and that may cause orthodeoxia and this platypnea. Okay. Just the basics.
Okay.
So this history of breathlessness gives us a very clear clue that we are dealing with what system?
We are dealing with cardiovascular system.
Yeah, so this is the sort of a very clear-cut history where you have a PND and an orthopnea. Then you get orthopnea in respiratory system. PND is very specific for cardiovascular. Even orthopnea is fairly enough, but can you get orthopnea in respiratory system involvement?
I mean, asthma.
Yeah, acute severe asthma and exacerbation of COPD. Those patients will not be able to let it out. Okay, you can get. Okay, that is why then the relevance will come later in the next thing. So next is palpitation.
Yes.
What are the conditions? What is define palpitation?
Unpleasant awareness of heartbeat.
Okay, what are the conditions which will cause palpitation?
It can be due to physiological and the pathological, ma'am.
Okay.
In physiological, it will cause during anxiety.
Okay.
During pregnancy.
Excellent. So when there is a high output failure and all, you can anemia. All that is going to cause pathological.
Yes, ma'am.
Of course, high output
pathological
failures.
Like hyperdynamic state.
Yes, hyperdynamic circulation. Then valvular, which valvular lesions?
Yes, in mitral regurgitation.
So regurgitant lesions. Why do you get palpitation in regurgitant lesions?
It will cause the dilatation of the ventricle. Regurgitation.
Can we put it more specifically? Left ventricular hypertrophy.
Hypertrophy. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So this hypertrophied heart, when there is increased demand and the heartbeat starts increasing, your oxygen demands goes up, and you'll start getting that palpitation. Now here you have a very clear clue that it is irregular in rhythm, associated with the occurs on exertion. So what sort of a thing are we dealing with? Arrhythmia,
valvular,
induced, right?
Yes, ma'am. Arrhythmia.
Of course, valvular, but here it is sort of irregular rhythm. So when you are having palpitation, one, it can be due to valvular cause, that regurgitant high output failures. Second, it can be due to arrhythmias, rhythm disturbance,
Yes,
like
ma'am.
supraventricular tachycardia, all those things. Even bradycardia, no, very slow, you can have this palpitation. Okay, now he
Yes,
has a history of attack of cough 1 month, which was
yes, ma'am.
associated with a mild sputum, right? And no
Yes, ma'am.
diurnal variation or on lying down. So, what do you think about this cough?
This cough may be most probably due to involvement of cardiovascular system, because uh,
Yes, because of
if it
this,
is respiratory system,
congestion.
loss will be first, ma'am. So after that
So
only
it,
breathlessness will occur.
yeah, so it is not like a respiratory infection which is causing. This is a
Yes,
typical case where the cough is due to the congestion in the lungs. Okay,
congestion in the
so
lung.
that
Yes,
is
ma'am. Yes.
now there is blood tinged, frothy, pink, frothy, blood tinged sputum. Where will you get this?
When there is uh, high pulmonary hypertension,
So pulmonary edema,
high
right? You
edema.
can
Yes, ma'am.
get.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So this is your typical history where what you will be getting. Now tell me all the causes of hemoptysis in the cardiovascular system.
Uh, when there is pulmonary hypertension,
One, pulmonary hypertension, right?
understand? Yes, ma'am. When there is pulmonary uh,
Pulmonary embolism, ma'am.
Excellent. Pulmonary embolism. Then
embolism.
which valvular heart disease?
Mitral
Mitral
stenosis, ma'am.
stenosis. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, excellent. Mitral stenosis. Then
Stenosis.
hemoptysis in cardiovascular system. So it can also occur because of a normally or a winter bronchitis. Some infection also can have this streaks of sputum. So these are the possibilities you think hemoptysis in cardiovascular system will be your limited, pathology, and mostly it is associated with mitral stenosis. Okay, next case, next slide.
History of bilateral
Okay, so
swelling for the past 1 month.
yeah. Yeah. Now, so when there is edema, what are all the systems probably involved?
Cardiovascular system.
Cardiovascular system.
And if there is
Others
any
also can help you.
Nephrotic.
nephrotic syndrome, and
Yes,
in liver
nephrotic. So renal.
also
Yes.
chronic kidney disease.
Hmm?
In chronic kidney disease,
Chronic kidney disease. Okay.
Liver
Anemia.
failure, ma'am.
Liver failure, abdomen. So all systems can cause edema. So by the onset of edema, how do we classify whether it's a cardiovascular, it's a renal, and all?
if there is any associated decrease in protein level, if there in renal there will be hypoalbuminemia.
Yes. Tell me.
Yes, ma'am.
Periorbital edema is first seen in renal system, ma'am.
Okay, periorbital edema, usually in the official person is periorbital edema, typically in a renal system.
Yes, ma'am.
Abdominal distension, then there is an abdominal pathology like cirrhosis. If there is a dependent edema like swelling and all, no, what you are having fetal edema, typically in your cardiovascular. So this gives us a clue that we are dealing with that. Now there is a history of easy fatigability in the past 1 month. So what is this easy fatigability?
When there is low cardiac output state,
Yes. So this gives us a clue that we are dealing with a low cardiac output state. So conditions
cardiac
which is going to have a low cardiac output state.
when the left heart is failing,
So one left
or
heart failure, okay.
bradycardia,
Bradycardia, okay. Bradyarrhythmias, okay.
uh,
Valvular lesions,
aortic stenosis, aortic stenosis,
aortic stenosis, mitral
mitral
stenosis,
stenosis.
intervention. Okay, all these are low cardiac output states, so you'll have an easy fatigability. So what do you mean? Normally we do some amount of whatever activity and we all become tired. That is not, that is of course fatigue, but here it is easy fatigue. Doing a normal activity is going to cause fatigue. Okay, that is why
Yes, ma'am.
easy fatigability is a very important trait what we have got. Go to the next slide.
No history of chest pain, no history of abdominal distension, no history of yellowish discoloration, no history of right hypochondral pain, no history of fever, sore throat, joint pain, no history of oliguria, no history of voice change, no history of dysphagia, no history of recurrent respiratory tract infection, no history of limb weakness.
Okay. Okay, next. Oh, that's all. Huh? This is your about your
Yes,
history
ma'am.
of presenting illness.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, okay, please. So, what important negative histories you have ruled out? Now, voice change, dysphagia, and all indicate what?
If there is any, if the massive left atrial hypertrophy, it can compress
Left
the
atrial
left recurrent
enlargement will cause compression
of the left
and
recurrent
compression.
laryngeal nerve and esophagus, ma'am.
Yeah. So, what is that? Ortner's syndrome.
It is dysphagia, ma'am, due to, ma'am,
Okay. Yeah,
due
tell
to
me. Somebody
compression.
can help him. Compression. Okay. So yellowish discoloration, jaundice with cardiovascular system. Where will you get?
Cardiac cirrhosis, ma'am.
Very good. One cardiac cirrhosis. Then
That is,
where else can you get?
in aortic stenosis, there
Second,
can be hemolysis.
aortic stenosis. In aortic stenosis, you will not get hemolysis. Where will you get? Then there is a valvular
Prosthetic valve,
leak.
ma'am.
Prosthetic valve. Very good. So that is one. Then what? Fever with cardiovascular system.
Infective endocarditis.
So infective endocarditis. Yes,
Hello,
all
ma'am.
that is this important here.
Infective endocarditis. Yes.
Okay. Then when you get this recurrent respiratory tract infection.
Ma'am. Hello,
History
ma'am.
of recurrent
Can you hear me,
respiratory
ma'am?
tract. Yes, you are very clear, Vasudevan. Vasudevan, right? Your name
Yes,
is?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you are very clear. Okay. Where will you get recurrent respiratory tract infection?
When there is chronic pulmonary edema.
Okay, excellent.
Shunt
Usually
lesions,
when
ma'am.
we very good. Shunt lesions when we are dealing with the congenital heart diseases like left to right shunt. Always the lung is there is always a plethora, so much fluid which is going on. So, but in children, how do they present? So they present as recurrent respiratory tract infection, especially when less than 5-year children and all. They'll not be running around, walking around. They'll not be able to vocalize their complaints and also this history of recurrent respiratory tract infection gives us a very good clue that we are handling a congenital heart disease. Okay. Now limb weakness, excellent that you have put it here. What is the importance of that?
Because
Limb weakness.
when there is any embolism that
Cardioembolic
dislodged
stroke, in other words.
cardioembolic stroke.
Okay. Yeah, excellent. Next slide.
Past history. There is a history of migratory joint. Yes, ma'am. Past history. There is a history of migratory joint pain involving large joints, knees and wrists, at around 11 years of age, for which he took large dose of medications, which were taken for nearly 1.5 months. No history of involuntary movements. Associated history of fever or skin lesion cannot be recolored by the patient. No history of skin rashes, nodules, small joint pain or deformity. no history of drug abuse, previous cardiac surgery, dental procedure, no history of hypertension, diabetes mellitus, asthma, epilepsy, CAV, CKD, no history of chronic respiratory tract infection, no history of previous surgery and prolonged drug intake.
Excellent, excellent. I think it literally covers up everything what we are trying to put. So one important history what we have got is a migratory joint pain involving the large joints, usually knee and wrist. So that is how. So tell me something about the polyarthritis which occurs in rheumatic fever.
Ma'am, in rheumatic fever, it will attack the large joints, ma'am.
One, it attacks the
Like knees
large
and
joints.
yes, ma'am. Because
Usually it heals
it's like
completely. There is no
mimic.
residual deformity, right?
Yes, ma'am. It is like antigenic mimicry. So the antibodies will attack the antigens in the large joints. So it will the pain will be migratory in nature. So it is called the migratory arthritis.
Polyarthritis, involving the large joints. So typically it is a sort of a serositis, serious involvement. Okay. And usually this is how the typical history will be. They'll not be able to give us the history of fever is there or other histories. Involuntary movement indicate what?
It is Sydenham's chorea.
Korea. Right? So usually this sort of a history there. In our country, they'd have gone for a local, whatever the physician available or whatever, they would have taken some medication. Once the pain is relieved, it becomes already. Usually the rheumatic fever, the joint pain of a rheumatic fever usually responds very well to your NSAID. In fact, one dose of aspirin is enough to cure the pain. So once the pain becomes all right, they just forget about it. And usually the pain is a very excruciating pain. In fact, even the falling of even a cloth over it will cause such a severe pain. But taken NSAID, it resolves very well. Okay, that is how the typical rheumatic fever, that acute rheumatic fever, polyarthritis will be there. Okay, then important that other things like skin rashes, nodules, very good. And no history of drug abuse, previous cardiac surgery, dental procedures. Okay, that is important. And when any comorbidities associated, and of course chronic respiratory tract infection, I gave you that importance is for that congenital heart disease. And of course all this, I think fairly enough it covers all your past history. Go to your next.
Yes, ma'am. Treatment history. The patient
Yes.
was in the hospital a year ago for breathlessness. He was told that he has a heart disease for which oral medications, furosemide, were given. There was symptomatic improvement initially, but later it progressed to the current state. Regarding previous treatment, there is a history of monthly injection given to the patient after an episode of migratory joint pain, which was discontinued by the patient himself as he experienced no symptoms. No history of any other current ongoing medications.
Very good. So the patient was taken 1 year back, and he was told he was having, okay, very good. So he was given some oral medication, and initially he has been, what is the importance of this monthly injections?
It is given, it is a penicillin, ma'am, for treatment for the rheumatic fever.
So prophylaxis, prophylactic
Benzoyl
treatment
penicillin.
of
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
penicillin.
Prophylactic. Yes.
And no history of other current ongoing medication. So is it a good sign or a bad sign? No history of current ongoing medication.
It's a bad thing.
Yeah, bad. No, he should have been taking
Yes, ma'am.
the medications because he is not taken. Now he is landed up to our hospital as a grade 4 dyspnea, right? His worsening of
Yes,
your
ma'am. Yes.
whatever the valvular lesion is having, he seems to have worsened because he became asymptomatic, and usually. So this is a typical history of many patients what we see. Now here, suppose if the patient is treated in our government setup and all, no, nowadays we don't give injections. In fact, injections have been stopped for the last 10 years or so itself. You know why? Why was it stopped in a government setup, the injections? Penicillin injections?
Don't know.
What is it?
Anaphylaxis, ma'am.
Very good. No, anaphylaxis. No, that is a very serious complication you have So very risky thing. So since by protocol wise we have this tablet penicillin available now. So I think if it is in patient is taking regular medication from a government institutions, no, it is usually the tablets what we give. We give tablet penicillin BD dose. In private setup, still I think the injections is going on. So that is the current scenario. But otherwise, this is how a history should be asked. Like treatment history should be very in detail, because worsening of a condition. Suppose if a patient has a cardiac disease and there is a worsening. If the patient has been admitted to hospital, it is some serious event which has occurred. So what are the precipitating factors for which the patient gets admitted or patient worsens? Patient on failure, patient is worsening. What are the possibilities? Yes, anybody can answer. What are the causes of worsening of heart failure, in other words? What is it in your case? There is no history.
Non-compliance to
Yes.
drugs are the most common cause of
One
worsening.
very important non-compliance of drug. Then, what are the other causes?
Any other illness apart from the heart failure, ma'am?
Infections.
So, other illness. Yes, any infections. Very good. So, it can be even another, now in our pandemic setup of this, even this COVID pneumonia or any other influenza. Now we are going to see a lot of influenza cases. So, anything. So any seasonal disease which is going to come on top of the already a comorbidity patient. Okay, then what are the other conditions? Now you said the patient was on furosemide. Anything relevant with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, tell me.
Because it will increase the exaggerate the edema.
Yes. You are giving edema for edema only. You are giving Lasix, right?
Again,
Furosemide
yes,
or
ma'am.
diuretic?
Hypokalemia, ma'am.
Very good. So electrolyte imbalance can occur. Then nothing
Okay.
prevents. He is already a 40-year-old male. So nothing. So he may be having of course he's not having diabetes and hypertensive, but this is the age group where all this starts setting in, and he may develop a myocardial infarction or a coronary artery disease. He may be a smoker, and all that things also can worsen your already compromised heart in the form of valvular disease with a heart failure which is in a compensated phase. So on top of that, if a coronary artery disease has come, it is going to decompensate. So whenever a patient has a worsening and comes and gets admitted to the hospital, of course, all this history is important, but more important is we should know what has precipitated the event for which the patient has come here. Okay. So next slide, please. Continue.
Yes, ma'am. Personal history.
Yes.
Is a mixed diet consumer. Calorie intake 1600 calories per day. Protein intake 35 grams per day. Appetite decrease. Weight slightly increased. Sleep was disturbed initially due to episodes of breathlessness, but was relieved as the patient started sleeping in the semi-erect position. Bowel and bladder habits are normal. No history of smoking, alcohol, or any other drug abuse.
Okay, excellent.
Family.
Previous slide. So this calorie intake and this protein intake is excellent, fine. But we don't have much time, so I think more relevant for pediatrics. But what is the importance of this calorie and protein? It's very good, but of course, tell me.
Hypoproteinemia, ma'am.
Yes,
Malnourishment.
hypoproteinemia, poor appetite. Why should a patient with heart failure have a poor appetite?
Because in case of
Because of?
there is ascites.
No, ascites. Of course, if there is ascites, fine. Usually the gastric wall congestion will all be there, no? That itself will decrease the appetite in such patients. So we will have to insist that they take at least minimum this amount of calories and protein. Okay. If you are able to calculate, fine. But all cases, I don't think it is practically possible to calculate the calories and protein, because you should know exact the quantity, how much dal will make how much protein and all that stuff. Okay. If you know it, fine. well, it's fine. Otherwise, the calorie and protein in adult patient at least needn't be stressed upon. Okay, others are fine. It's an excellent thing, but it's not practicable in the when you have just a very short duration in the exam. Okay, go to the next.
Yes, ma'am. Family history. No history of similar complaints in the family members. No history of diabetes mellitus, hypertension, dyslipidemia. No history of consanguinity.
Okay, now family history with relevance to family members. What is the importance to you?
Ma'am, there can be congenital heart disease running in the family, ma'am.
Okay, one congenital heart disease. Yours is not
Yes,
congenital, right? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
With
It's
your
not
case,
congenital.
right? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
In the relevance to your case.
And rheumatic heart disease will easily pass to the siblings, ma'am.
One, as he already, as he's rightly pointed out, usually rheumatic heart disease is a disease of a developing country. There is a disease of a poor, like tuberculosis only we say, no, when there is overcrowding with a room shared by many members, and so that is sort of a thing. One, it can be transmitted. Second, what they say is in the rheumatic heart disease. So, what is basically the pathophysiology in rheumatic heart disease?
And it is antigenic mimicry.
Antigenic mimicry and antigen antibody response. So, rheumatic heart disease, this group A beta hemolytic streptococci. So, this infection, many of us are going to be exposed. All of us are going to be exposed in this environment, but it is very few. You know that of course it is
Susceptible to.
the susceptible individual. So what they say is this susceptibility runs in a family. So if you see the family history, so there will be some member who then consanguinity. Of consanguinity. Can you tell me the degrees of consanguinity?
First degree between the siblings.
Yes.
Second degree, it is like
relative,
daughter of
first cousin. And, yes.
First cousin.
Okay.
Second,
yes.
Third degree is it is
distant. Yeah. So okay, it's important because consanguinity also predisposes to your genetic problems. So all this. Suppose if there is a congenital heart disease and there is a history in the family, you should be able to draw a family tree. You know how to draw a family tree?
Yes, ma'am.
How is female represented? How is male represented?
Female in circle, male in box.
Male in box. Suppose the patient, the person has died. What do you do?
Cross.
Yeah, you cut a cross. Suppose this is the patient. How do you show? So in your family tree, one person is the patient. How do you represent that patient?
A dot in the center, ma'am.
What? No, not dot in the center. Okay, suppose. Wait a minute. My handwriting may be poor. Oh, are you able to visualize what I have drawn? What have I shown? Why the two lines? Is it clear?
I think I have bad network, so I can't able to see clear.
What? Sorry. Okay. I think when you come in person, we can have this. Okay. You bring yours. So if there is, how do you show the consanguinity? Second degree consanguinity, you draw two lines in between the circle and the square. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
We'll go to the next slide. Yeah. Go to the next slide.
Socioeconomic history. He lives in semi-pakka house. 4 members lives in the house. 1 room and 1 window present. Income 7,000 per month. According to modified Kuppusamy scale, he belongs to lower socioeconomic class.
Excellent, excellent. This is what we should always insist, and definitely all of you, when you're presenting cardiovascular system and respiratory system, definitely kindly tell the socioeconomic history, because rheumatic heart disease, so we have to give this background, and tuberculosis also, this is a very important thing. So it's always a good habit to have the socioeconomic history in your presenting. Okay, make it a habit. This is an excellent thing what you have shown. Next.
Summary: a 40-year-old
Yes.
patient, Mrs. Segar, presented with grade 4 dyspnea associated with orthopnea and PND, intermittent irregular palpitations on exertion, cough with pink frothy expectoration, and past history of migratory joint pain. The history is also suggestive of bilateral pitting pedal edema. Most probable system involved is cardiovascular system. Yes, ma'am.
Wait. Why is the history suggestive of bilateral pitting pedal edema? What history you got to suggest all this? There is a bilateral
Yes,
leg
history of
swelling which
bilateral.
disappears from lying down, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then that last line can be avoided. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Other than that, it's right.
Yes, ma'am. Most
You can
probable system
rather
involved
put,
is
what is the better way of putting it instead of this? Dependent edema?
okay. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. No, pitting, number pitting irka illaya, we are seeing, we are checking it, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Ma'am, the expectoration and pedal edema suggest towards left ventricular failure, ma'am.
okay. Okay, so past history of acatoma suggests it is a case of allo. So what? So now this is how you tell it in a better way. So this is a 40-year-old patient who was initially grade 1, now has become grade 4 dyspnea for past 3 years, associated with orthopnea and paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea with palpitation, that is irregular palpitation and exertion, associated with dependent edema, and there is history with a past history of a migratory joint pain which suggests of a past history of rheumatic fever. So in this background, I think in terms of cardiovascular system. In cardiovascular system, possible involvement is a valvular involvement with a rheumatic
Etiology.
rheumatic heart disease with a valvular involvement. That's the better way of putting. Okay. Past history of rheumatic fever.
Yes, ma'am.
But there is a past history of rheumatic fever. And now the patient has a rheumatic heart disease with valvular involvement. If it is a valvular involvement, which valve do you think is involved with this sort of a background?
So in this background,
Is it
we think of involvement of cardiovascular.
Yeah, cardiovascular. In cardiovascular, do you think it's a mitral valvular involvement or aortic valvular involvement?
Yes, ma'am. Mitral valvular involvement.
Excellent. So here is a background. This sort of a background typically gives us a involvement which looks like a mitral. In mitral, is it a stenotic lesion you feel, or is it a regurgitant lesion you're going to feel?
Stenotic with regurgitant.
We are not clear at this stage.
We are not.
Huh? Come on, commit. You have to commit.
With following investigation, we will confirm.
Investigation. I know examination பண்ணல அதுக்குள்ள investigation.
Yes, ma'am. Following examination.
Examination. So it's valvular heart disease, but beyond that, whether it's a stenotic or a regurgitant. Why can't we stop it as stenosis? What are the cardinal symptoms of a mitral stenosis?
Only the left atrium will be.
Yes.
Case of
Come on,
stenotic.
tell.
In case of stenotic, not both atrium and ventricle will not be failed. Only the left
Very
atrium will be
good.
involved.
So,
Here only
Yes, here you have a clue that patient is also having a left ventricular involvement
heart.
if it is a pure left heart failure, right? Whereas in mitral stenosis, the left ventricle will be normal because stenotic lesion and
Normal.
it is the disease above the valve. So it is a mitral valvular lesion. We are not sure what is it, but avlo solla vendam think of mitral valvular disease. Why did you think of aortic valvular disease?
If there is aortic, the primary involvement will be in the left ventricle.
Okay, so symptom
So the left.
there'll be chest pain, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Chest
There will be
pain,
chest pain.
syncope, that is how
Syncope,
your typical, yes, your typical
Yes.
features can present. Okay.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
it is aortic regurgitation, you can have a history of palpitation can be there, pedal edema, all that can be there, but it will be a very florid presentation. But so probably mitral valvular involvement. So go for your examination.
General examination. Patient was conscious, oriented to time. Yes, ma'am. Can I continue, ma'am?
Continue.
Yes. Patient was conscious, oriented to time, place, and person. Moderately built and moderately nourished. Patient is dyspneic and tachypneic. Bilateral pitting pedal edema present. No pallor, no cyanosis, no icterus, no clubbing, no significant generalized lymphadenopathy. No signs or markers of infective endocarditis. No signs of atherosclerosis.
Very good. So patient is distinct and tachypneic, and positive points are just previous slide. Okay, moderately built, moderately nourished. Okay, okay. Go to the next. Next.
Vitals,
Next.
pulse rate
Ah.
110 beats per minute, irregular rhythm, normal volume and character, normal condition of the vessel wall, no radial or no radiofemoral delay, all peripheral pulses felt. BP 110 bar 75 mm Hg, average of 3 readings were taken, pulse pressure 35 mm Hg, respiratory rate 24 breaths per minute, tachypneic, temperature afebrile, JVP elevated 5 cm above the sternal angle.
Okay, here what have you missed?
Ma'am?
He should have told and he has not told in your pulse.
Ma'am?
Yes. What point you have not mentioned here? Anybody else?
Pulse pressure, ma'am.
He has mentioned, no? There's some 35 millimeter. This is a irregular rhythm. Where can you get irregular?
In atrial fibrillation.
Okay. Where will you get frequent irregularity apart from atrial fibrillation?
And pulse deficit.
Pulse deficit, ma'am.
Pulse deficit. Very good.
Yes.
Where is the pulse deficit here? Is it important or not important?
Yes, ma'am. This is important.
It was not taken from some. Where have you taken these slides from? I mean, where have you taken this case from?
Ma'am, Bona prepare.
Huh?
I referred 3 cases, ma'am.
Okay, very good. So, excellent, doctor. You are doing very well. Nothing other. But whenever you are talking of atrial fibrillation, you will have to mention the pulses deficit. So, see, maybe we are giving a case scenario, the registrar would have forgotten to give, but you will have to mention what pulses deficit. What is the number you will mention? Because you are going to see case. Obviously, how will you do the pulses deficit?
How much pulse is reduced from the normal limit?
அதான் bedside எப்படி பண்ண போறீங்க? Now suppose this case we have seen bedside. One person, it requires 2 people, right? In the exam, you will be the only person around. So you'll have to ask the help for the skilled assistant or skilled PG who will be there. You'll have to request and ask them to come. One person will be seeing the pulse, the other will auscultate at the same time. They have to measure, they have to start counting after the end of 1 minute. You have to see what is the pulse rate, what is the heart rate, and the difference is your pulse deficit. What is the, when is it significant? When is it significant? When the deficit is more than 10,
than 10.
right? Yeah, if it is less
Yes,
than
ma'am.
10, what are the possibilities?
Can be tachyarrhythmia, sinus tachycardia.
ஏப்பா சைனஸ் டாக்கிகார்டியா ஏன் irregularly irregular வரணும்? Others can answer.
VPC, ma'am.
Yes, when there are ectopics, ventricular premature complexes, when there are frequent ectopics, you can, right? Now it is less than 10. I still feel it is positive and ectopic. You make the patient exercise, okay? Make the patient exercise, not doing all your gym and all. You make him walk up to the end of the corridor, come back. That is for that patient, that itself is going to be a big exercise. Okay. Now on exercise, what will happen to atrial fibrillation and what will happen to your ectopics? Ectopics will disappear. Atrial fibrillation will remain. So it will be irregularly irregular. Okay. It is very important. Real better than no. If it is a rapid heart like yours is 110 or 120 per minute, you can make out this irregularity. Suppose the patient is on drugs and patient is having normal pulse rate. So finding out irregularity may be difficult unless you see the pulse deficit. If the pulse deficit is okay. Now, so it is normal volume, normal character, okay. Otherwise seems to be normal. Respiratory rate 24 breaths per minute. So it's tachypneic, okay. You'll have to say whether it's a thoraco-abdominal or abdominal-thoracic. So what will you tell for a male?
Yes, ma'am. For a male, it is abdominal-thoracic.
Abdominal-thoracic. So that you should qualify here, okay.
Thoracic, yes.
And JVP is 12 centimeters elevated above the sternal angle when patient is put at 45 degrees angle, okay. Patient, after putting the patient in 45 degrees, we found out that the JVP is elevated. How will you measure JVP?
Above the sternal angle. One scale. Yes.
Okay. One scale or two scale method?
Two scale method.
Very good. So, see the horizontal distance or is the perpendicular distance? You have to see the perpendicular distance. You keep perpendicular distance. You keep one at the sternal angle, okay, and one at this. That is where the JVP is elevated, and you will see the centimeter recording at the level of sternal angle. That height has to be measured, okay. And when you, how will you differentiate JVP from carotid pulsation?
Carotid
yes,
is more medial.
It's more medial.
Medial.
This will be, carotid pulsation will be more lateral. It will be only visible. JVP, carotid will be palpable. Okay, outward it will be palpable. Here you can obliterate when you obliterate the base. There it will not be able to obliterate. In JVP you will be able to see 2 to 3 waves, whereas in carotid pulsation it will be a single wave. There's only the single pulsation you are going to see. Okay. So these basic differences between JVP and carotid pulsation is very important. You should be able to answer. Please read up, and because bedside that is it is frequently you may confuse whether it's a JVP or a carotid pulsation. Why are we putting the patient in a 45-degree angle? Why should we put patient in a 45-degree angle?
Because to make to make the
What?
The right atrium and the
straight
vein
line
will
means
come
of
in the straight line, ma'am.
same
Very
same
good.
same.
Then, suppose if JVP is very much elevated, right? What happens? JVP is very much elevated. It will be up to the angle of the mandible. Above it will be so full. No, you may not be able to see. So one, you make the patient lie down degree angle, you get accurate measurement. Not go further in JVP. Then they will not be able to finish. Next slide.
CVS examination.
Yes.
Inspection. Chest wall appears to be symmetrical. Trachea appears to be in midline. Apical impulse is visualized at left 6th intercostal space, lateral to mid-clavicular line. Left parasternal heave is visible. No venous engorgement, scars or sinuses over the chest. No dilated veins, sinuses or scars over the chest.
Next.
Palpation. Trachea was confirmed to be in midline. Apex beat was palpable in the left 5th and 6th intercostal space. 1.5 centimeter lateral to the midclav.
Why 5th and 6th? Define the apical impulse.
It is the impulse felt in the lowermost, in the pericardium
lowermost and
region,
outermost.
outermost.
Lowermost and outermost.
Ma'am.
Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So usually this is typical way students when their bedside will be telling me. It is seen in the 5th space, 6th space. It is a diffuse sort of nature. We are not able to exactly make out where is the apical impulse. Okay, this is literally a real case scenario which you are putting. But when we are going to present and when we are going to commit, we have to commit. I mean, you have to commit a space. You have to commit a place. You cannot say 5th and 6th and all. So where is that definite cardiac impulse? So usually it will be in the 6th space, in the outermost and so it will be around the 6th space. So you can say it is palpable in the 6th space or 1.5 centimeter lateral. But it will be so diffuse, no? In the both the spaces you will be able to see the pulsation. But when we are presenting, we will have to commit. Okay. Then.
Yes,
what is the character?
So we have to tell this as in 5th space. Yes.
6th space.
6th.
Now,
yes,
what is the difference? Now the apical impulse, that is, it is down and out. What are the possibilities?
Yes. Because of the left ventricular dilatation.
What conditions?
I mean, volume overload state, hyperdynamic.
Okay. What valvular lesions? So regurgitant lesion.
Yes, in regurgitant.
Down and out. Either MR or AR.
Yes,
okay. Okay. Suppose it's only out. What is the possibility?
In case of hypertrophy, in case of stenotic lesion.
Hypertrophy, not stenotic lesion. That is aortic stenosis or systemic hypertension.
Aortic stenosis.
Or pulmonary hypertension when it is associated with mitral stenosis. If it is a pure mitral stenosis, left ventricle will be normal in position. Okay. Now, so that is the background. Now, characters, what are the characters you can have? It can be normal.
Hyperdynamic.
It can be
or
tapping.
Normal. Tapping or heaving.
Where will you get?
Thrust, ma'am.
Where will you get tapping apical impulse?
In mitral stenosis.
Mitral stenosis. Where will you get hyperdynamic?
Regurgitation.
Regurgitation. It can be mitral regurgitation or aortic regurgitation. Will you get heaving apical impulse?
In aortic stenosis, you get heaving
aortic stenosis. How will you? Very good. How will you differentiate whether it is a aortic stenosis and even systemic hypertension? When there is a peripheral vascular resistance is a border condition, it is increased, you are going to get heaving. So how are you going to differentiate whether it is a heaving or a hyperdynamic?
I mean, in hyperdynamic, it will be sustained, man. There will be sustained.
Sustained or ill
Hello, ma'am.
sustained? Yes. Will it be sustained or ill sustained?
I mean, heaving it is sustained.
Very good. So in heaving it will be sustained. There will be a lift and it will be more than 50% it will be there, and then it comes down, it will be in a single space. Whereas if it is a hyperdynamic, you see diffuse character more than 2 spaces, it will be ill sustained. There will be a rapid upstroke and rapid downstroke. Okay. And parasternal heave is present. What is the grading of how do parasternal heave? Anybody? How will you grade parasternal heave? Parasternal heave. There are 3 grades. Come on, somebody should answer. What, Vasudevan? Dr. Vasudevan, are you there?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes. Grading of heave. You don't know?
Ma'am, I don't know, ma'am.
Oh no. Okay.
There are 3 grades.
Heave. Very good. Finish.
The first grade, it's visible but not palpable, ma'am. In the second grade,
Okay.
it's visible and palpable, but it's also obliterated.
Not. It's obliterable. Grade 3, it is non-obliterable. So how do you do it?
Non-obliterable.
Patient should be in the supine position. Okay. And in the
Yes,
left
ma'am.
parasternal region, you keep a pen. Okay. And see for the lift. Okay. Then you by palpating ulnar cord, see for the lift. So is it obliterable, or even by giving pressure it will be pushing you? That is non-obliterable. Okay. Presence of parasternal heave indicates what?
Right ventricular hypertrophy.
Excellent. Right ventricular hypertrophy. Okay. Continue your presentation. Dr. Vasudevan.
Auscultation.
Wait. Palpable P2. No. Before that. Palpable P2 is present and there is a diastolic thrill over the apex, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So far, from your inspection and palpation, what is your impression? Now, give me the impression.
Because if there is palpable P2, there will be pulmonary hypertension. So,
okay, I'll give you the analysis. Seems to be the patients have vibration.
hello, ma'am.
And one more thing in vitals of cardiovascular system is lower.
Ma'am, I can't hear you well.
Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Now, examination of this in cardiovascular system examination, you have to check the BP of both upper limb and lower limb. Why is it important?
Yes, ma'am. Because
why is it important?
in some lesions there will be difference on, like in coarctation of aorta, there will be low in lower limb.
What is Hill's sign?
Hill sign is due to when there is, in case of aortic regurgitation, there will be massive heaving pulse. So in lower limb, because of the peripheral vascular dilation.
Okay, I'll tell you what is Hill sign. When you see the BP, what is the normal difference between upper and lower limb BP?
Hello, ma'am.
Hello,
Yes, ma'am. I think I have poor network.
Oh. Is it audible to others, doctor? Others? Is it audible? Am I audible well?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So Hill sign is the difference between the upper limb and the lower limb. So if the lower limb, usually the difference is less than 20. So if it is 20 to 40, it is moderate, and more than 40 to 60, Then more than 60 is your severe. So for aortic regurgitation, any cardiovascular system, you have to take BP recording of both upper limb and lower limb. Now here, when you are coming to inspection, it is a down and out apical impulse with a hyperdynamic nature, with a left parasternal heave, and a P2 is palpable, and there is a thrill over the apex, which is a diastolic thrill. Where will you get a diastolic thrill? In apex.
In case of regurgitation.
No. Diastolic thrill you get in a mitral stenosis.
Mitral stenosis. Okay, ma'am.
Yes, mitral regurgitation you are going to get a systolic thrill. Okay. Now,
Yes,
down and out apical impulse gives us a clue it is a regurgitant lesion. Now, whether it is a mitral regurgitation or aortic regurgitation, how will you make out? What are the other features of an aortic regurgitation? What will be the pulse like in aortic regurgitation?
A bounding
character collapsing.
Collapsing.
What
Yes,
will
ma'am.
be the BP? Yes, blood pressure in aortic regurgitation patient.
It will be a very large volume. More
yes, large volume pulse pressure. Yes,
systolic
if
will
you
be high,
take the
diastolic
BP
very
low,
low.
it will be diastolic will be very low. Systolic
very
will
low.
be 180 and diastolic will be almost like 0. Okay,
yes.
that is how it will be. So here with all these clues, it seems to be like a mitral stenosis with mitral regurgitation, with a mitral regurgitation which is the predominant lesion because hyperdynamic in nature. Suppose if it is a mitral stenosis, what will be the character of apical impulse? It will be tapping in nature,
tapping,
right?
yes, ma'am. Yes,
Here
ma'am. Tapping, yes,
and it is down and out apical impulse. So mitral regurgitation seems to be a predominant lesion, and the volume also seems to be normal. But whereas he's having a diastolic thrill. So with this itself, with your inspection, palpation, and your general examination finding, we know that now we are dealing with mitral stenosis and mitral regurgitation. Your auscultation is just going to confirm whatever we are seeing. We'll go to auscultation.
Auscultation. Mitral area S1, S2, and S3 heard. S1 is soft. A low pitched, rough rumbling, mid diastolic murmur without presystolic accentuation heard. Best with bell of the stethoscope. The patient in the left lateral position and breath held in expiration. Opening snap heard. A high pitched, soft blowing, pansystolic murmur radiating to the left axilla and back. Heard best with the diaphragm of the stethoscope with patient in left lateral position and no increase with expiration. Tricuspid area S1, S2 heard, no added sound. Pulmonary area S1, S2 heard, loud P2, high pitch, soft blowing decrescendo with pitched early diastolic murmur during full inspiration, that is Graham Steele murmur. Aortic area S1, S2 heard, no added sound.
Okay, now in your auscultation, very good. Now more so in our mitral area, we are going to comment on the sound of S1. So here it is soft S1, but when there is an atrial fibrillation, you can say soft and variable. Okay.
Yes.
Usually atrial fibrillation, it will be like each cycle is going to be different. So here then there is an S3 heard. So that we have to keep in mind. Third heart sound heard, that is there is some seems to be a gallop rhythm, and you have a mid diastolic murmur without presystolic accentuation, and an opening snap is heard. Then next is you have a pansystolic murmur, and which is heard best to the which is seems is there any radiation of this radiating to the left axilla and back?
Axilla.
Tricuspid area. You have a pansystolic murmur in a mitral area. With you have in pulmonary area, you are saying Graham Steele murmur, right? Early diastolic murmur.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It indicates what?
It indicates pulmonary regurgitation. Severe pulmonary hypertension.
Yeah, so pulmonary regurgitation hypertension. When such a severe pulmonary hypertension, you will have some amount of tricuspid regurgitation also in the form of a pansystolic murmur in the tricuspid area. So how are you going to differentiate whether this pansystolic murmur is from the tricuspid regurgitation or from a mitral regurgitation? How are we going to differentiate? What happens with respect to respiration? Usually, the left-sided events are better heard in expiration. The right-sided events
Yes,
are
ma'am.
better heard in inspiration. So, what is the
Inspiration. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Carvalho sign? In Carvalho sign, the pansystolic murmur will be better heard in inspiration. For this amount of pulmonary hypertension, what you are giving, you will have a pansystolic murmur which will also be heard in the tricuspid area. By this phases of respiration, we will have to make up. Okay.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
here
Yes, ma'am.
there is a third heart sound. There seems to be a mid-diastolic murmur. What is the importance of opening snap here?
Because of my stenotic valve.
Yeah, here it is a stenotic valve. Even in a severe mitral regurgitation, you can
Stenotic.
have a flow. Yes, stenotic valve.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's in a mitral
And then
regurgitation
pliable.
with a severe, yeah, pliable. Excellent. It's mitral regurgitation. The presence of opening snap indicates that there is an organic lesion of stenosis in addition to regurgitation. But with this finding, we know that mitral regurgitation is a predominant lesion and mitral stenosis is only mild mitral stenosis. Okay, go to your next slide.
Yes, ma'am.
Next.
Other system examination. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Respiratory system, bilateral basal crackles here. Per abdomen examination, tender hepatomegaly, no splenomegaly, no free fluid present. CNS, no focal neurological deficit, no signs of limb weakness, aphasia, memory impairment, or cranial nerve dysfunction.
Okay. Diagnosis.
Yes, ma'am. Diagnosis, a case of acquired valvular heart disease of rheumatic etiology affecting mitral valve, most likely mitral stenosis with mitral regurgitation, with pulmonary hypertension, with atrial fibrillation, with symptoms of right heart failure, and no signs of infective endocarditis or active rheumatic fever with NYHA class 4.
Okay. And about failure,
Ma'am?
failure.
Please repeat.
Specific about right heart failure. By
Hello, ma'am.
Hello. Bibasal
Ma'am, your voice is
indicate
breaking.
what? Oh, I think signal is poor. Huh? Hello, are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Now we
yes,
can
ma'am.
hear, ma'am.
So bibasal crackles indicate what? There is also a left ventricular failure. PND
Yes,
is
yes,
there. So,
yes, ma'am.
in other words, everything is right in your diagnosis, except I'll say it's a case of acquired valvular heart disease, most probably rheumatic in etiology, most likely mitral stenosis with mitral regurgitation with pulmonary hypertension, patient in atrial fibrillation, and features suggestive congestive cardiac failure with no signs of infective endocarditis or no acute rheumatic fever with NIHA classification grade 4. Okay. That will be your complete. It is not only right heart failure. You can put it as congestive cardiac failure. Okay.
Yes.
With this. Okay. What investigation will you do?
Investigation, basic investigations like CBC, FBS, and lipid profile, renal function test, liver function test. Specific investigations like chest X-ray, PA view, ECG, echocardiography.
Okay. Any more slides left?
Yes, ma'am. Management.
Okay.
Management. Bed rest, salt restriction, diuretics, furosemide, penicillin prophylaxis, infective endocarditis prophylaxis, anticoagulants. Surgical management, mitral valve replacement, mitral valvulotomy, percutaneous balloon. Mostly mitral valve replacement.
Yeah, here we can go only for mitral valve. Next, any other slides?
Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. That's all.
That's all. Okay, come back. After diagnosis, investigations, no? So main investigation is your ECG and echo. Of course, you will have to tell all the other investigations, ECG, echo, and X-ray. So in X-ray, you are going to see the cardiac enlargement, and you will make out in mitral regurgitation, you will have a left atrial enlargement, you will have a left ventricular enlargement. So you will have a basically in X-ray, if you see, there will be a big heart. Left. How will you make by X-ray? That's a cardiomegaly.
because the chest and the cardiac ratio, ma'am.
Yeah, transthoracic diameter ratio, which is more than
Transthoracic
50%. Yeah.
Yes,
Then
ma'am.
left atrial enlargement. How will you make radiologically left atrial enlargement?
It will be like ballooning. The cardiac shadow will be more like
No. You'll see. Okay, I
Shadow
think we
in
can
his
talk.
shadow, ma'am.
Shadow within the shadow will be present and splaying of carina. Okay, for left atrial enlargement, and there can be straightening of left heart border because of the enlargement of left atrial appendage. Okay, that you should see. Okay, now next treatment very important is go to the next slide. So bed rest, towel restriction, back rest, and you give diuretics. And for atrial fibrillation, you are going to give a rate control and a rhythm control. So rate control, what drug will you give? You can ideally give beta blocker, digoxin, and calcium channel blocker. Okay, penicillin prophylaxis, of course, for your rheumatic fever, and anticoagulants for atrial fibrillation. Okay. I think we can stop the class with this. It was an excellent presentation, Dr. Vasudevan. It was except for minor, I think, some corrections which I told you. This is how an ideal case should be presented. Good efforts, Dr. Vasudevan. It was an excellent case presentation. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. So what I'm see, this is an ideal case scenario. But when you are going to see bedside, hopefully, I think your next turn of your posting, you should be coming. You should come to the hospital, come bedside and see the patients. When you come, it is not a typical case scenario. Okay, each patient will be different. There will be something different in each patient. Like one patient, no, you may not be able to even finding out whether it's a systolic thrill or diastolic thrill is going to take some amount of skill, and all that can come only when you're going to be bedside. Okay, but anyway, the pattern of presentation, I think this was an excellent presentation. Okay, thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Vasudevan. Okay, and I think the representative can give the attendance to the registrar. Okay. Okay then. Okay, we'll be seeing in the next class. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.